The Two and Out CFL podcast with Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones starts now.
As we get you ready and ourselves ready for week 14 of the 2025 CFL season, Sheldon, you were just saying before we recorded, the season is basically 2/3 done. We are in the home stretch. The road to the Grey Cup is on, but man, it has sure flown by.
Yeah, it's been very fast. I just don't know kind of where it went. We have a lot of different things happening in the league. We have a lot of different teams, doing different things than we thought at the beginning of the season. It's been a great season. There's been great games, and I hope the last third is just as good as the first couple were.
Yeah, I think we're just getting started. There's going to be a lot more fun happenings happening this CFL season, and I just wanted to talk about a story the Three Down Nation put out because they were able to speak to CFL Commissioner Stuart Johnston about the Grey Cup bidding process and the location of the 2027 Grey Cup. It's something that they've started a few years ago where they want to have the Grey Cup announced 2 years in advance. We know that this November it's in Winnipeg. Next year it is in Calgary, so it does stay in the West, but 2027 we're quite unsure where it's going to be. Now, according to the article, we're down to Ottawa and Toronto. Now, Ottawa has some things planned for their stadium and some renovations. And AJ Jakubek, the voice of the Ottawa RedBlacks, saying in a reply on X that the RedBlacks are probably out in 2027 and with the renovations won't be back in on the Grey Cup until 2031. So will 2027 be in Toronto, which has sort of become a bit of a polarizing market with regular Grey Cuppers. 2012, I was at the 100th Grey Cup there. I believe you were too, Sheldon.
Yeah.
What an effort. What an amazing Grey Cup. And I know they pulled out all the stops for the 100th, but 4 years later in 2016, well, the game was great. Ottawa beating Calgary in overtime, Henry Burris's last game. The on-the-field stuff was great. The off-the-field stuff, not so much. It felt like Toronto just had the game because they had to have it, and it just wasn't the best put-together Grey Cup week. There were tickets given away with pizzas and all sorts of things like that. So 2027 would come the year after the Argos are booted out of their stadium for 3 games, maybe recouping some of those costs for MLSC in 2027. And 2027 also marks 11 years since Toronto would last have the Grey Cup, the city where it would be every year for some of the CFL fans of a certain vintage. So either way, it looks like it's probably going to be in Ontario.
Yeah, I know it's unlikely, but there's also a dark horse of where Edmonton, they also bid for the game that Calgary got. So I could see them bidding again. It's just I don't know if the league would be really okay with, it would be 4 cups in 5 years being in the West. So,
you know what? And I see a lot of comments about that. But 2009 was in Calgary, and 2010 was in Edmonton, and then 2018 was in Edmonton, and 2019 was in Calgary. So they've done back-to-back Alberta Grey Cups, but the Winnipeg and Regina and Calgary,
BC was
Vancouver last year. So,
But at the same time, if Ottawa isn't able to do it, then I guess Toronto would make sense, and they have all those renovations that is going to be happening to BMO Field as well. As a person who's now kind of just starting going to Grey Cup every year, I don't really want it to go to Toronto yet. There's other markets I would like to go first. I know Montreal is probably unlikely until 2029 at the earliest, maybe 2030. So if Ottawa's out until 2031, if Montreal's out till 2029 or 30, I guess the Argos are in there, but you're not going to go back to Hamilton this quick, I don't think. So it looks like Edmonton is going to be in the mix sooner than later. So maybe they do get it this time, and we get an easier Grey Cup to attend.
Well, and I hope that it's not just Toronto's like, all right, we'll take it.
Yeah.
I hope they want it.
Because they need, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it is a bidding process, so hopefully it's not just the league just saying, "Here, Argos, it's your turn again." Like, we need to see them want to make it a big party that it has become.
And that's no slight on the people in the Argos organization on the ground every day, fighting the good fight. But, the higher-ups. I hope those folks know what I mean. Let's stay with the Argos here, Sheldon, because Chad Kelly posting something interesting on Instagram this week, basically saying the comeback is set for September 13th. Well, the Argos on bye this week, just coming off a couple huge wins with Nick Arbuckle at quarterback, including a Labor Day win in Hamilton. The big win against the Lions, putting up 52 points. And over the past 6 games, Nick Arbuckle has thrown for 2,137 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions over that stretch. X's and Argos host, color man for the Argos, Ben Grant, says that over a full season, that would put him at 6,411 yards, 42 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. So Arbuckle on absolute fire right now. They're just getting Mackay Polk back in the offense. Spencer Brown rolling on the ground game. So now they've got some balance. But Chad Kelly was the guy. He was, the highest paid, one of the highest paid players in the CFL. 20 wins, 5 losses as a starter with the Argos. Who's going to be starting next week if Chad Kelly comes off the 6-game injured list?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Dinwiddie has quite the choice to make here. I think if it was me, I'd be rolling with the hot hand. We don't have to go far to see what happens when you break momentum of a winning quarterback or a dominant quarterback. We had Nathan Rourke come in and kind of disrupt the BC Lions only a couple seasons ago when they were hosting the Grey Cup. I know Vernon was hurt and kind of that, but like you said, Arbuckle is playing at an insane pace that nobody would have ever thought was possible. He's been doing a stand-up job in becoming the starter with all the uncertainty around Kelly this offseason and season. It seems to me just silly to try to break that momentum, but like you said, Chad Kelly was the number one, and his record is pretty much said for it speaks for itself as well. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but I just hope that it doesn't wreck the momentum that the Argos have been able to get after kind of losing in spite of how great Arbuckle has been playing.
I think the right move is to go with Arbuckle, but I think they're going to go with Kelly. I just have a hunch that that's what they're going to do.
The way they've treated Kelly, it seems like he's their ride or die, and it doesn't matter what Arbuckle's done.
Now, we'll see how that works out for them.
Yep, it's a bold strategy.
It is, Nick Arbuckle, the new Rodney Dangerfield of the CFL. Vernon Adams Jr. seemed to be that guy for a little while, and of course, I think the Lions. Anybody would have made that choice to bring Nathan Rourke back to the fold and give him the start. Maybe not on 3 days of practice, although if we go back to that time, VA was hurt at that time too. Nick Arbuckle is not hurt right now. And it wasn't long ago. It was like a year and a half ago where maybe he thought he was done with pro football. Then he's back into the fold. He's Grey Cup MVP and he's playing the way he's playing now. So, yeah, I don't know where this puts Nick Arbuckle going forward, but it's definitely a situation to watch over the next week and a half or so. I guess we're going to have to wait and see who's taking all those reps in Argo practice next week.
Yeah.
Week 14 starts in Ottawa, where the RedBlacks are 4.5-point underdogs against the visiting BC Lions, and the over-under set at 55.5. The eyes were on the Ottawa quarterback situation as well, because their starting quarterback, Drew Brown, remains out. Looks like limited in practice, so Dustin Crum, again, taking the first team reps at quarterback. Some other veterans like Devontae Dedman, Braylon Addison, and Lucas Cormier all back practicing in full for the RedBlacks. It seems like Dustin Crum could be getting another shot here to start for the RedBlacks. I know some Ottawa fans hoping to see somebody like Tyree Adams, who got some action with the team in recent years, did tear an ACL. Looks like he's ready to go, but the RedBlacks are going to ride with Dustin Crum, who I think, he's looked okay, and he's been able to hit some of those big-name receivers like Justin Hardy and Geno Lewis. I'm still not so sure about how the defense has performed, though.
Yeah, and like you said, getting some healthy bodies back in there practicing at full, so that can only help Ottawa. But yeah, I agree with you. Their defense is not up to snuff, and BC's offense can be explosive at the drop of a hat. So, and they're it is always tough for BC to take those long road trips out east. They don't have the greatest record of doing that, but I think having the extra bye week off and maybe will help them kind of combat that a little bit, maybe. But yeah, like you said, Ottawa, they need to find a way to win, and I just you got to hope that Dustin Crum is the guy who can lead them to do that.
A lot of questions about BC's defense as well after that performance against the Argos a couple weeks ago, and their pass rush has not been consistent, and even with the addition of Matthew Betts back into the fold. But some people pointing at the departure of defensive line coach John Bowman. His name escaped me. A CFL legend with the Montreal Alouettes. But you know where he is now? He's in Calgary. And you see what that defensive line is doing. I'm not so sure if that is a coincidence at all. The Lions have announced the signing of a new defensive lineman by the name of Levi Bell. He did spend 2023 in the UFL with the Michigan Panthers. And it does look like he's not on the PR. It looks like this guy could have a shot at being on the roster and in the rotation at defensive end for the Lions. There have been some injuries there, but that goes without saying. They have to get to the quarterback, and they do need to get to Dustin Crum to have a victory here. A welcome sight at practice coming off the 6-game injury list for the Lions is on the offensive line. CFL veteran Michael Couture back at center, which I'm sure Nathan Rourke and company will be happy to have at center for that O-line. But you see the over-under at 55.5 in this game. I think the odds makers are expecting some touchdowns, Sheldon.
Yeah, like you said, with both defenses struggling and both teams having, high-powered receivers and the like, I'd probably take the over in this game too. We've seen a lot of explosive football in the past few weeks, so I would love for Week 14 to get kicked off with a nice big high-scoring affair.
BC allowing 29.5 points a game. The RedBlacks allowing 28.7 points a game. The Lions allowing 107 yards on the ground a game, but they still remain the top of the CFL with 260.5 passing yards against a game. That average is climbing, after what happened with Nick Arbuckle a few weeks ago. The Ottawa RedBlacks are right around 281 yards a game. I think, on the opposite side of things, their front in Ottawa is difficult to move the ball against. So James Butler, he might have a bit of a challenge moving the ball on the ground against the RedBlacks, but Nathan Rourke, I think 6 of the last 7 games, something like that. He's had 300-yard games. All of the receivers in the receiving corps have 450 plus yards. Keon Hatcher, the leading receiver in the league. So, and they need, well, actually, you know what? Both teams fighting for their playoff lives here. BC Lions probably have more of a chance at getting into the playoffs. At this point, they are looking at that crossover. And they've got back-to-back here with Ottawa. Mm-hmm. So if they win back-to-back, I do wonder if that means that Bob Dice is gone. And after that back-to-back, they've got the Stampeders and they have the Argos, the team that they're going head-to-head with, for getting that, I guess, third place in the East Division spot. So September is a critical month for BC.
Yeah, especially with, it looks like the only way they are going to make the playoffs, barring a collapse of the Bombers or the Riders, is, through the East. So, yeah, that's a pretty fortunate schedule to have, and kind of, putting it in your own destiny to cross over is pretty interesting.
Saturday, it's a triple header in the CFL, and it starts in Montreal, where the visiting Ticats are 3.5-point favorites. The over-under is at 51.5 for this one. The Alouettes are getting healthy, and that is the key for this team. Tyson Philpott, Austin Mack, James Letcher Jr., Marc-Antoine Dequoy, Sean Thomas Erlington, Mustafa Johnson, David Dallaire, all practiced in full this week. All veterans have been missing. So the bye week last week, well, some people were hoping to see Ottawa, Montreal. The Alouettes, I think, used that bye week to get healthy.
Yeah, it looks like it. I think this still the biggest puzzle piece needed for their success is Davis Alexander, but it's nothing but good for James Morgan to get all those weapons back on offense, and to get somebody like Dequoy back on defense. I think that his absence has been a big reason as to why Montreal hasn't been able to limit the other teams, scoring points on them.
So that's the X factor in this one. Are the Ticats going to be able to disrupt a quarterback in his second start, James Morgan and the Alouettes? And I do think Morgan has a good supporting cast around him. And with a bye week, just a little bit more preparation, the Ticats having just played on Monday, I know it's a quarterback with not much CFL experience, but I don't know. I feel like there actually could be an upset here. That Ticats offense, they seem to have been taking, the first half off the past few weeks. The second half getting into a bit of a rhythm. I don't know if they can afford to wait to the second half to get going in this one.
No, they can't. It's their defense has been hanging them out to dry the past few games. Their offense, like you said, slow starts, but near the end of the game, they've kind of been finishing. But when your defense gives up that play that it did at the end of the game, when you're at that high, when you think you've just come back yourself and won the game, that's demoralizing. But at the same time, that can be something that helps a team learn and helps them get better through adversity. And after losing that game, they're up against the other team who they're fighting for first place right now. I know with Toronto kind of coming on board, and if Hamilton and Montreal continue to struggle, I know one of them needs to win here, but these three teams, if Toronto can get some more wins under their belt and kind of hold BC at bay, then we could have the traditional 3 in the East, 3 in the West. So, huge games down the stretch here. And Bo Levi, losing his first ever Labor Day game, he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. And again, this is the team that you need to beat right now. So perfect timing.
Yeah, and with the Alouettes getting healthy, I think that only makes that defense stronger. I don't think anybody's questioning the defense in Montreal. It's been down to the fourth-string quarterback. And any team in the CFL probably would have fallen apart by this point. They've got the leading sack getter in the CFL at this point, and that's Isaac Adiemi-Berglund, who's making life difficult for opposing quarterbacks. But those Ticats, I know Julian Hauser, sometimes he can make plays. He made plays, last week. And Mario Kendricks for the Ticats has 5 sacks. So he is in the top 10 of sack getters in the CFL. And he did have one against the Argos. Before that, though, he didn't have one since week 6 against the RedBlacks. So and Brent Monson, he needs to put together a game plan that's going to be tough on the quarterback, only in his second start for the Alouettes. So, like I said, it's a critical month for the BC Lions. It also is for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Destiny in their own hands here. If they were to beat Montreal, they're in first place in the East. If they lose, well, all of a sudden, the Ticats have the Bombers still twice, and they do have the Argos and the Stampeders still this year. So this win, they need to take advantage of an Alouettes team that is banged up, and they just got to hope that maybe these guys are a little bit rusty. But I feel like the Alouettes are going to be pretty fired up on Saturday.
Oh, I think they will be too. And it's just, Hamilton's been struggling, and they need to, show their fans that they're still in this, that they're not, just falling down after hitting a little bit of adversity. Their offense was crazy, lights out, Kenny Lawler all over the field, and then he kind of got shut down. But then Weefall, they're not Weefall.
Keandre.
Yeah, Keandre, he goes off, right? And, then Bridges goes off. Like, they were having such, success on offense, but their defense was just letting him down. And, they need to be able to stop this team. Montreal, he only's had one game, but that also means that they don't have a lot of film on him. So Montreal and Jason Moss are going to be able to disguise him a little bit and to use those advantages that they have with Hamilton not being familiar with him, right? So, this is a really good matchup of two teams who, right now at least, and for the majority of the season, have been the top 2 teams in the East.
Yeah, either way, I do think one of these teams is going to host the East Final. Winning this game will go a long way before deciding that. Well, next, it's the Banjo Bowl. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 1.5-point favorites over the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The over-under at 52.5. I didn't know this story until tonight, Sheldon. During the Labor Day Classic, Jaden Dahlke was down on the field. He ends up going to the hospital. He's there for 17 minutes, returns to the game, and gets back on the field. I guess, I don't know, maybe he had a stinger or something like that and had some pins and needles going through his arm, worried about a neck injury. But he gets back on the field? That sounds pretty old school stuff, like 1974 football, you know what I mean?
I do, and it's also really nice that he can bypass healthcare like that. Like 17 minutes in and out with a CT.
You need that rider pass.
Yeah, I know. My dad was in emergency for a long time waiting for CTs lately, so I joke. But Dahlke, no one has ever questioned his toughness. No one has ever questioned his intestinal fortitude. So yeah, when I saw that a couple of days ago, but when I did see that, I wasn't surprised. They don't call him Big Dahlke Energy for no reason. He's crazy. But good to hear that he was able to get back in there and there wasn't anything, because it sounded like he was having some pretty crazy pins and needles and that's not fun, and that's kind of scary when you're a football player going in there, right? So good to hear he's okay.
Well, and shout out to his family. They threw a massive tailgate in Calgary for that Rider Stamps game a couple of weeks ago. And before we get any further into the Banjo Bowl, this is a lengthy email from our officiating friend Bart. And it's all about the momentum that caused the single point instead of the safety during the Labor Day Classic. Definitely an obscure rule, and we know that the CFL has no shortage of those. But Bart
especially
says,
to keep games close down the stretch.
Are you saying that there's a conspiracy?
I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm saying, like, these close calls, I feel like they do kind of favor what's best for the television product. But I'm kind of saying that, like, tongue in cheek.
You're saying that as a pro wrestling fan. It's not a bad thing.
I understand, making stories better but like, okay, I'd like to hear what how it's going to try to spin this or whatever.
It's pretty lengthy, so here, let's go. He goes, the momentum rule, as it has always been applied, both in amateur and the CFL, was applied absolutely properly on that play. The momentum of the ball 100% took Nichols into the end zone. He continues. Here's the thing, though. Watch the replay of it. Nichols takes 3 steps on the green in front of the goal line as he's trying to run it out. However, the question is not where his feet out of the end zone, but whether the ball was out of the end zone. So on a touchdown, the tip of the ball just has to touch the goal line for it to be a touchdown. But going the other way, the ball has to be completely past the line to be considered out of the end zone. So while Nichols' feet were outside the goal line, there's no view that shows if the ball got out of the end zone. But, he says, none of this results in a safety. If the ball got out of the end zone, then Nichols gets his forward progress, which would put the ball on the 1-yard line. Even though he was smoked hard and got knocked into the end zone, forward progress counts on all plays, not just with the receivers, running backs, quarterback sneaks, blah, blah, blah. In summary, this play is 100% in line with how this is being called everywhere in Canada. He was chasing the ball, and as he picked it up, his momentum clearly took him into the end zone. If he got the ball out, which he may have, then the ball should have been first down Winnipeg on the 1-yard line. Because while it looked like he moved forward and then got tackled in the end zone, he still gets whatever forward progress he had unless he makes a move to reestablish his momentum. Oh, and then he goes, on the subject of Andre Proulx, I've had the pleasure of meeting Andre a number of times, including at conferences and social events for officials, as well as in the locker room before the game when I was doing replay or was a part of the on-field crew. He's an amazing official and is one of the nicest guys, and he has zero ego. Officials with ego, in my opinion, are a bad thing because they can make the game about them. Andre is not that. He's a genuine, super nice guy who's also an amazing official. And he adds, lastly, as the head ref, Andre's responsibility is entirely the QB. So if a downfield official makes a call, or any other official makes a call that the fans don't like, it's dumb to blame the head ref because he or she didn't see the play. Refs don't follow the ball like coaches or fans. A fundamental tenet of officiating is to only look at what you're responsible for. In the case of the head ref, it's almost entirely the QB, so after the ball is thrown, you're watching the QB to ensure he's not hit late. So all the head ref knows on a PI call is what the official who called it is telling him. I thought it was a pretty solid email there.
Yeah, I agree with it. The only thing that I kind of, I agree that there was only 2 options of the 3. I don't think that there was ever a safety. I know that's what they called him on the field, but I don't think a safety is right at all. But when it comes to his momentum, like I can understand him saying that because the ball was going that way, but like, to me, when I watched the replay, he was parallel to the line when he kind of made a move. And so if he would have been going all the way back towards, I could understand the momentum thing, but it looked like he did try to make that football move to me to start to go east-west instead of north-south. But I kind of understand. It just that, that outcome was the worst possible outcome for the Riders on that play, the team that was winning at the time. And, if you give the team that's losing instant field position like that, it can make a tight game. You know what I'm saying?
This is
I'm
not this kind of
exactly,
podcast.
No, I'm saying all of this tongue in cheek. I don't have a tinfoil hat beside me, but I'm saying it's
You
easy
looked, you checked to see if there was a tinfoil hat.
Yeah. It's easy. Well, with AI, you don't know what you can do to me right now. I'm just saying I can understand why people think that these conspiracy theories are there. I can understand why people think that Al Bradbury is biased against the Riders because there's so many instances of questionable calls going against the Riders, but I don't necessarily think that that's actually true. But again, sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire. Sometimes when something's fishy, it stinks. But in this case, I don't think we're there. But I do think it should have been ball at the one, no point awarded, just because I think he did get out. But this league, we've got a lot of new sponsors so far this league. I think Stuart Johnson's been doing a lot of good things. Being a former guy at TSN and broadcasting, maybe it's time the CFL get some pylon cams on the end zone so we can see exactly what that line is and see if a football did come out. Because if we had, 4, nice resolution 4K cameras just inside the pylons like the NFL does, we'd be able to see that stuff. So
you know what though, in the CFL with the goalpost on the goal line, I'm sure there's a camera they can put in the goalpost looking down. You know what I mean?
Well, I've seen cameras. That'd they've had cameras on the goalpost before to catch, and because I remember a field goal hitting one time, I think. Right. It was behind. But yeah, I think in the digital age where we rely so much on instant replay, whether that's good or bad for the league, the investment of having some more cameras in to get these calls right, to help the way the league looks to people who are picking it up or joining or trying to, the less chances we have of having stuff like AJ Ouellette getting his head ripped off and, it not being called a penalty, but also apparently not even being reviewable because it didn't cause an injury. That kind of stuff makes the league look silly sometimes. And I just wish that they would take the steps needed to eliminate the chance for the silliness to keep happening.
There are some things that are really goofy, I find. If we can all clearly see it at home that it was a face mask, just make the call. I mean, you can't really deny it. You know what I mean?
They've stopped games and they've said the ball
fact
is
that we can challenge a no yards and get out our meter sticks and
that's a perfect example. Yeah. You can't charge a guy getting his head ripped off, but you can charge to see if guys in an imaginary halo that very good.
All right, so we'll go to the Bombers here, who make a pretty big signing for their offense, and that's receiver Ontario Wilson. He did spend a good portion of training camp with the New York Jets, but he had 1,026 yards, 3 TDs with the Bombers last year. He was their nominee for Rookie of the Year, so they have released receiver Kyron Moore in a corresponding move. Now, Dalton Schoen has not practiced so far this week as of recording. Listed as a knee issue, some people noting that it looked like he was hobbled on that 2-point conversion play where Tavon Campbell took it to the house for 2 points to clinch the game for the Riders. Man, if Dalton Schoen's not able to play again, that's a gut punch for the blue and gold.
Yeah, he's been, that guy who make those insane catches and just convert the second downs. And it looked kind of like it was non-contact too. So either retweaking it or maybe he just wasn't fully ready to go, but they felt like he needed to go. I don't know. Playing with a knee brace maybe getting used to that a little bit. But yeah, huge loss. But when you're able to get Ontario Wilson back, that's huge. And I kind of hate to see these guys like Polk and the Joe and Ontario Wilson, not be able to get that dream of playing in the NFL. But it's so good for us fans in the CFL to see these guys back in here and signing new deals, or at least going to continue the deal that they're on, and try to become these star players, and hopefully can get some marketing behind them, and they can stay a long time, and make it you know make it worthwhile their stay up here in Canada as CFL players. I just want to see more stars in the league, and so this is great to see these guys back.
Yeah, somebody corrected me and us on the YouTube channel, saying that he's from the same country as Ajo. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I've been saying Ajo, but Ajo, I guess is the proper
I think it's
way.
Ajo, yeah, Ajo. But here, different in Regina, like different radio people are all saying it different ways.
Oh, I've heard Ajo.
Yeah. Dave Thomas says Ajo, so I'm just gonna go with Dave because he's kind of he'd be the official guy.
There we go. At Bomber practice, it appeared that Gabe Wallace on the offensive line came up limping and needed attention from the trainer. So Tui Ely got in at left guard in practice. So there might be a change on the offensive line for the Bombers. If we remember, didn't Tui Ely have a big man play for the Bombers earlier this season? So if they work that into the Banjo Bowl, that would get that Princess Auto Stadium all rowdy and ready to go. But I do think the Bombers are going to bring a different game plan this time around, and I think it's going to involve number 20, Brady Oliveira, a whole lot more than it did on Sunday.
Like, you would think so. I don't know why he wasn't featured more on Sunday. Like, the Bombers never used to be cute. They never used to be trying to outgame. Like, they just did what they did. They ran the ball, and then they used play action to get their receivers open, and Zach would just chuck the ball down. So, I know it's a new offensive coordinator. He was the running backs coach, I believe, right? Like, he was Oliveira's guy, so you'd think he'd be feeding the rock a lot more. So I'm kind of confused there, unless they're just trying to do some sort of load management and keep him healthy for the playoffs. But that's not. Oliveira is the type of back who wants the ball every single down, and he wants to just run it and run it and run it. So very weird. But I guess the Riders, outside of against Calgary, have been really good against the run. So maybe you're just trying to play cute and smart and try to make the team think that they're focusing on you and then doing something different. But I don't know. The Bombers, they don't want to get swept here. This is for the season series. They need to win this game. I think it's must win for them more than it is for the Riders at this point, just because I think Riders' best case scenario coming out of this right now is a split. And so you can't have the Bombers, play cute again. It's time to do the basics. Give Brady Oliveira the rock.
And I think it's easier said than done, but the Riders, they need to get off to a fast start. You fall behind at Princess Auto Stadium, and we've seen Banjo Bowls before. That ends up being a pretty tall hole to dig out of. So they can't do what they did in Calgary a couple of weeks ago, drop the ball in the end zone and miss a field goal. That would be that would be the complete opposite of what the green team needs to make happen in Winnipeg.
Yeah, we say it every year. You need to go in, you need to shut the fans up, you need to start, it's just getting boring and repetitive. Everyone knows exactly what the Riders need to do here. And they've been struggling with having good starts. At the first third of the season, they had great starts. I think it was every game for the first 6 or 7, they were scoring a touchdown on the first drive. Most of the times they were letting the other team score a touchdown on the first drive too. But in this kind of second third of the season, they have had really bad first quarters, and you can't do that in Winnipeg. You can't especially like the way that they played here last week with in the first quarter with the giving up the touchdown and then the fumble and being lucky that Winnipeg didn't go for it or convert there. They need to limit any sort of mistakes, and they need to play clean football. And it's easier said than done when it comes to playing in Winnipeg in that stadium.
Tommy Neild is on fire for the Riders. 3 touchdowns, or touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games with the team. I want to ask you, would they ever get Sean Payne Jr. Into the lineup here? It seems like he's been ready for a few weeks. Ever since Joe Robustelli had his big 200-yard outing, I think he's been pretty quiet. We noticed it even on field goals. They had Dante Myers and Mario Alford back to return. I think Sean Payne would be an option for that too if they wanted him to return, since he has experience doing that. I'd like to see him get back onto the field, and I think him and Harris had some pretty good chemistry last year when he was on the field, but hasn't been able to see it yet in 2025.
Yeah, it's kind of like a similar situation of Chad Kelly in Toronto. But Robustelli hasn't been having as amazing as a season as Arbuckle has. So I can understand people wanting to see Bain in there. I'm a guy who I'm really high on Robustelli, and I'm worried you can't really. If you're gonna have him not playing, you're gonna have to one game him in, because if you put him on the practice roster, I think someone's gonna steal him. So you have to be careful there. But the Riders just have so many quality receivers that are going to be either coming back right away or close to coming back. Like, you still have Emilus, you still have Keon Schaefer-Baker. You have Picton, who's right now just basically a healthy scratch because of Joe's back. Now that I think at practice this week, Joe was in there instead of Dale Duncan-Busby. So there's another guy who's been contributing who might, have to come off the roster here too. So I don't know what the Riders are going to do with receiver position. They have so many that maybe, a trade could be coming. You have a struggling kicker. I think I've said it here before, but I don't know if another team who's maybe not in the hunt would be willing to trade a kicker for a top quality Canadian receiver. But certainly the Riders could offer that. But again, it's just an embarrassment of riches. It's tough to try to see what they are going to actually do. But like you, I would like to see Sean Payne in there to see what he can do, to see if he's just as quick after this knee injury. And Mario came back. He had a good game other than that fumble. But I think he kind of realizes that he was being a little selfish there, and I don't think he's going to make that mistake again. But if something does happen with Mario or another fumble or something like that, then Sean Payne, I'd get him on there as just returner, even if that's all it is right at the beginning.
It's another battle on the prairies in Winnipeg. We know that Banjo Bowl is always fired up. And then we wrap it up in Edmonton, the Battle of Alberta, where the Stamps show up as 5.5-point favorites and the over-under at 50.5. The Elks making a big news by signing offensive lineman Carter O'Donnell, 26 years old. He was drafted actually by the Alouettes in 2020, but he spent 3 years with the Indianapolis Colts. And then had 3 starts with the Arizona Cardinals a couple years ago. Now he's coming to Canada as a part of the Elks organization. It was the Chris Jones regime that made the trade, sent the first overall pick to Montreal. That first overall pick became Tyrell Richards, the linebacker. Back came Carter O'Donnell. I believe they also they received the 4th overall pick, which became Enoch Maconzo, the linebacker, who's now with the Bombers. But there's been a lot of talk about the Elks offensive line, the struggles they had against the Stamps, the struggles they had against the Riders. This can only be a good thing both in the short and the long term for Edmonton.
Yeah, it's getting what we think is going to be a huge piece to that puzzle, and they've been missing a few pieces of that puzzle. So Elks fans should be excited about this, and hopefully he's able to make an immediate impact when he does get into the game here. Because whether it's Cody Fajardo or maybe I guess Trey Ford, if something happens to Cody Fajardo, whoever's back there, they need to be protected, and it just hasn't been getting done. So hopefully O'Donnell's able to slot in there and add some protection.
At Elks practice so far this week, no sign of Niles Morgan or Jake Seresna. Both veterans left the game against the Stamps on Labor Day, and with a short week, they might be in danger of missing here, and that would leave a lot of leadership on that defense. And it was something we didn't mention on the Labor Day game, but we mentioned it in the preview. Vernon Adams was sick going into the game, and maybe that contributed to his struggles. And of course, the leader he is, he's not going to blame it on that, but he's going to want to go to Edmonton and have a much better game on Saturday. And if he's feeling better, I don't. At the same time, Cody, he's going to want to have a better game as well. I don't think we can see a repeat performance from either quarterbacks. I think we're going to get a better show Saturday at Commonwealth.
Yeah, I would hope so. The Elks, they just weren't able to capitalize on a slow start for the Stamps last week, and they kind of just let things get out of control. And I think with a little bit different play calling and with some better protection for Cody, they could have actually been able to get into a position where taking a lead kind of around halftime. But the Elks are pretty much, they're must win. Playoffs are very, I'd say, unlikely at this point, but until you're mathematically eliminated, every game's a must win. And a split with Calgary here is best case scenario for them. But it's going to be really tough without, having a guy like Jake Seresna in there. So they have to find a way to get VA disrupted. They have to find a way to, confuse him with some looks and hopefully just limit his availability to just pick defenses apart when he's in the zone.
Losing that season series of BC so early on was tough for Edmonton, because they would have a much better shot at the playoffs if they had that season series. But they're 0-5 inside the division. The Stamps 6-0 inside the division here. And all it takes is a Saskatchewan loss in Winnipeg and a Calgary win in Edmonton, and they're in first place. And they're going to know the results of that Winnipeg Sask game when they go to Edmonton. And 12 games into the season, first place with the season series over the Riders. I'd say the Stamps are in a pretty good position at this moment.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I still see people, saying online how, the Riders are the best team in the league because they have the best record. That's just not true. Right now, if you took everything on the table, the Stamps are the best team in the league, and they kind of have everything to gain right now. They have a far easier task than the Riders do, I think. And I don't think anyone would have predicted the Stamps, just after halfway through the season or 2/3 would be in position to be in first place in this league if your name is not Ryan Ballantyne. And that's not a shade, because I just, none of us thought that. I think we all thought that VA was going to improve them, but not this fast and not this quick. And I know it's not all VA, like you said. Bowman coming over has done an amazing work with the defensive line, and Stamps fans, we thought that they were gonna figure out, like the rest of us, what it's like to not have such a great team to cheer for all the time. But they're right back in there, and bless them, I guess.
I would say 9 times out of 10, if your defense had 12 new starters going into the new year and a new DC, then it might take a while to gel. and might be a bit of a train wreck.
Yeah.
Not the case in Calgary. VA, in an interview, and of course he's going to say this about his teammates, but he said this is the best defense he's ever played with. He said it goes down to Pop Warner, high school, college, the best defense he's ever had. They're giving up 18 offensive points a game, and they've given up 15 offensive touchdowns, which is 10 less than the next closest team. This Stampeder defense, there's something to be reckoned with.
Yeah. And, nobody other than, Ottawa has been able to solve it. And yeah, it's crazy. Like right now, Calgary, they have the best chances at the Grey Cup. They have the best chance at hosting the West Final. Like they have everything, and yet they're in second place right now. So that just goes to show how good they are, and what kind of schedule they have, and it's going to take a lot for them not to be able to sweep out the Elks here. So hopefully Edmonton can do us Rider fans a solid this week. That's all I guess we can hope for.
You know that the Elks are going to lose to the Stampeders, and then they're going to beat the Riders at the end of September.
Yep, that's the way we figure it anyway. That's for sure.
The Stamps, they still have a season series to figure out with the Lions. They have 2 games against the Leos, and they actually do play the Elks at the end of the year as well. October 24th, the final regular season game in Edmonton. They do have the Ticats, the Argos, and the Alouettes as well. So they got the Eastern tour, but Calgary's in pretty darn good shape right now to host the West Final at Mac Mahon Stadium. Just a steamy Spudinator, man. Just a steamy one. It doesn't sound appetizing when I put it that way.
Oh, it does sound appetizing. It really, really, really does. I want one so bad.
I'm going to be... selfishly, I kind of hope the Riders don't host the West Final, because I'm going to be in Churchill, Manitoba for the division finals. So if they could fall the third and the Stamps could finish second, that would be most appreciated. But I could do with a home playoff game in Regina too. Bombers finished first 6 years in a row. Could you imagine?
Well, we're all just waiting for the Riders to have that long collapse, right? So, God, I hope it's not this year, please. No.
The scars, they run deep.
But I also don't want to go 16-2 and lose in the Grey Cup like the Argos. Like, I don't want to do that either. Yeah. So,
Grey Cup, they lost in the East Final.
Yeah, so finally, that's yeah.
All right, let's get those power rankings up and at 'em. Here we go. Sheldon's power rankings heading into week 14.
Yeah, and with only 3 games, we didn't have much movement. I didn't copy anyone this time. I didn't see anyone else's, but I still ended up the same as Morgan's again. But so the Bombers and the Argos moved up, and the Ticats and the Elks moved down. Just kind of, the Bombers move up in a loss, just because they were a little bit better than other teams, and then Calgary and Saskatchewan, they say the same. So 1 Stamps, 2 Sask, 3 Winnipeg, 4 Toronto, 5 Hamilton, 6 Edmonton, 7 BC, 8 the RedBlacks, and 9 is Montreal. But with all these guys getting back in Montreal's, offense here, starting lineup, I don't think they'll be in 9 for much longer.
Blake Milton says, Sheldon, how did you come to the conclusion of giving the Bombers the 3 spot when they continue to make mental mistakes and other than the Montreal game flat out refuse to use Oliveira?
Well, Blake, I don't know. I just felt that way. The Bombers, they made mistakes. They still almost beat the Riders. And the Riders are the number 2 team. So I guess that's why.
Morgan says, 2 same power rankings in a row? Have I started thinking like Sheldon? Lord have mercy on my soul.
Yeah, if that's the case, bud, you got to get that checked out because I don't recommend it. Not one bit.
Oh, man. USports football happening this weekend. Laurier and Queens playing Friday night football in... Is that Kingston? Oh, I hope it's Kingston in Queens. We got McGill and Concordia. UBC playing the Saskatchewan Huskies. Kahari Jones and the UBC Thunderbirds going to Saskatoon. U of A playing U of R. And U of M, the Manitoba Bisons playing the Dinos on Friday. Friday is a big one. Saturday, we also got Carleton, Waterloo, Toronto and York, Bishops, St. Mary's, Ottawa, Western, Guelph, and Windsor, as well as Mount Allison and St. FX. There's been some crazy endings, crazy performances in U Sports so far this season. I think it's just going to continue here this weekend.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm hoping to get out to the U of R game because, all these highlights I've been seeing on Twitter makes me really want to attend the game. So I hope a lot of people do that too and get out and support the U Sports.
All right, I'm gonna pull up my fantasy lineup here and then see. You know what? I felt good about my lineup. I had 115 points. But I got crushed by Joe Pritchard in the CFL Podcast Fantasy League. Still beat me by 30. You're coming off a win against BB Can Ryan. So this week you're playing the league average, which is my number 1 nemesis. And I have George, the CFL Outsiders. So I'm looking forward to that. What's your lineup looking like?
Yeah, I'm still tinkering, but this is kind of what I have right now. I have Zach Collaros as my quarterback. I just think that he's going to have a little bit of, and it's not even a bounce back game. He had a pretty good game himself, but I just think he's going to get a little boost from that noise there. Running backs, I got Mills and I got Thies. Or Thies or whatever. He's my Tice. Sorry, Tice. Jesus Christ. So he's my value pick just because I wanted to try to get some better receivers as well. To go with Zach Collaros, I have Dembski right now. And then I also have Keon Hatcher, and my flex is Neeld. And I am rolling with the BC Lions defense because they are the cheapest.
Well, they're going to be about 3K, hey?
3.4.
All right.
So, yeah.
All right, so my lineup, I got the Ticats defense against the Montreal Alouettes. I don't know. We'll see if I stick with that. Nathan Rourke's my quarterback and my captain. Brady Oliveira is my RB1. Sean Thomas Erlington, my RB2. I've got Javon Katoy in there, Nick Dembski, and Khalil Pimpleton in my flex against the BC Lions defense. We'll see what he does. I still feel like he's got a big 200-yard explosion in him. I hope it's this week, but since I've picked him, it likely not. So avoid him if you do want to do well this week. Week 14 of the 2025 CFL season is here. The BC Lions visiting Ottawa as 4.5-point favorites. The Ticats visiting Montreal as 3.5-point favorites. The Riders visiting Winnipeg, where the Bombers are 1.5-point favorites. And the Stampeders visiting Edmonton as 5.5-point favorites. I am taking the Stampeders, the Bombers, the Alouettes, and the Lions. Sheldon, who do you got?
I have the Lions, the Ticats, the Bombers, and the Stamps.
There you go. Week 14 of the 2025 CFL season is here. You can rate, review, and subscribe to 2 and Out on your favorite podcatcher. And you can visit us on YouTube as well. Leave a comment there, subscribe, and ring the bell, because every once in a while we go live, and you ring that bell, you get the notification when we go live and talk CFL football with you. You can support the Patreon at 2andout.ca. Enjoy yourself, enjoy the games, take care of yourself and each other. We'll talk to you soon on 2 and Out.
The 2 and Out CFL podcast is written, produced, and hosted by Travis Currah and co-hosted by Sheldon Jones. Subscribe to 2 and Out on all major podcast platforms and YouTube to keep up to date with future shows.